So, I mean, how do you think music can help people who are maybe living with dementia or Alzheimer's?
Well, I guess, that was a really interesting course, that course I had, because they were very strict in it. It was a tough course. And I had to write, they wanted to make sure that everybody else in there they were clinicians, they were people working on the front lines with people
Mm,
with. So I had to stick to the rules when I wrote my essay, but I did slip music in again. And that tutor said to me at the end, and she's a good friend now, she said, "Have you ever thought about doing a PhD?" And I kind of laughed and said, "Absolutely not."
mm.
and but I did. I applied for a studentship, and I got a studentship, and I was very grateful for that. Hello, I'm Dr. Claire Garabedian. I'm speaking to you from Edinburgh, Scotland, and I'm glad to be here. Sorry we're not meeting in person. And I am going to speak to you and illustrate with my cello. My whole work that I do is about music and its ability, if used thoughtfully and intentionally, to create a space, a sonic space wherein all can thrive, be it someone living with dementia or other cognitive conditions, or really anyone with any health conditions or none. It's an equalizer. It's a place where the sound captures us, keeps us there equally, and there's a sense of safety, comfort, identity, um, connection, engagement that happens within that sonic space. So I just played for you a brief improvisation just to create a bit of that space. This is a very short talk. I would ask you to please have a piece of paper if you have one and a pen or pencil ready so that you can jot down thoughts that come up. I'm going to ask you some questions to mull over as we go as well. First one being, think about the first tune you ever danced to. Do you remember what it was? How it felt? So if I play, the other thing I'm going to say before I play anything else is that I believe that music, I don't know if universal is the quite right term to use, but that it can be used, that any piece of music, a serious classical piece, an improvised piece, a folk tune, a song, they're all telling a story without words in this case. And that's what makes it more universal. So, um, How do you feel right now? That was a Celtic tune, probably most of you have never heard, called A Fond Kiss. And it's a beautiful version of that. And I loved that piece the moment I heard it. And there's another question for you. Has there been tunes, pieces, works of music that you've heard for the first time and just immediately loved it, immediately gravitated toward it? That's something we've probably all hopefully experienced. Why? And it generally has to do with, well, there's a lot of pop musicians that know the trick with these hooks. There's something that grabs you and just is part of your, it just reaches some part of you, and you weren't planning on it necessarily at all. It's something you've never heard before. So that has to do with a number of things. There's all sorts of parts to how music reaches and affects us, some of which I'll discuss here and show you. That first improvisation I did was on a mode. So we have these different scales in Western music. So this is a major scale. Very common in all the music that we listen to in Western music. And then there's the modal tones scales, the other modal scales. That is a modal scale, but minor scale. That feels different. That's sadder. That's a little more something different. There's something slightly different. There's quite a few of these modal scales, and they all have a different effect on how we feel. And then there's rhythm. So if I play something, that's quite slow. If I play something that goes, same scale, more lively. So here, those are but a few parts of what makes music, the rhythm and the melody or the set of notes being played. But here's the names. Here's two very important terms that we use when we're working with people therapeutically or in music therapy. There is a difference, maybe I'll get into in this talk. But in any case, when I'm trying to think about a way of reaching somebody, because that's really what my interest is, my personal interest is, how can I connect with you as someone sitting in front of me with possibly no verbal ability, and it's all done therefore by nonverbal communication, all those things, facial expressions, body posture. Is this person looking at their watch? And if they are, is that just a habit? Like a person I'm playing for commonly right now, I play once a week for a woman with advanced dementia who looks at her watch often, but she always has. And she's loving what I'm doing. So it's not always that easy, even if you know a lot about nonverbal communication, but it helps. And so I'll be looking always, and if I have music, I've got it off to the side. But if if a person, here's a question, if I'm playing for somebody who's agitated, which is a very understandable condition for somebody living with dementia who no longer has language, they might have all sorts of reasons for being agitated, not being able to communicate what they need, and it may be even a simple thing they need. But if they can't communicate it, it's frustrating. So there's an agitation that can happen, a frustration. And if that happens and I come in, what sort of music should I play? Should I play something calm and lullaby-like to soothe that person? Or should I play something raucous and rowdy and loud? What do you think? I'm going to tell you what the answer to that is. The answer is I'm going to match where that person is. If that person is in an agitated, very upset mood, and I've got a paper about an experience I had where I did an emergency music intervention. I was called to do one with somebody where they were incredibly agitated. So I went in and played for 45 minutes everything I could think of, but constantly at a fast speed and interacting with him and catching him, bringing him on board with me, because then I have a chance of changing it. So, and in terms of the music, I played, in his case, anything I could think of. He was a very accomplished traditional Scottish musician, but I played popular tunes, I played Scottish tunes, I improvised, I did whatever I wanted and could to try not to stop playing. But in general, you can play, yes, familiar music is very important, but I would argue that those pieces I played earlier that probably, well, I know none of you knew the improvisation and you didn't know that Celtic piece either. It can still grab you. So I can take a piece, if I come in and I'm very limited in what I've got in my bag of tricks to play, I can play everybody knows that. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Now, there's both rhythmic entrainment, which is my favorite term, I think, and entrainment, which I was referring to earlier, is about the rhythms that are going on. Our entire bodies are in training as we speak. Our heart is pumping, everything is going through our body, and that entrainment is what keeps us alive, but it's also what keeps us connected to each other. So right now, hopefully, I'm holding your attention. So that means that even though we're all in a virtual space, you're all hopefully being captured and entrained, which means we're in the same synchronicity. And with that, I can then, if I can be on the same entrainment with you, if you're agitated, I'm not going to play a slow tune, I might get your attention. If I play a slow tune, you might actually get angry, but you certainly aren't going to pay attention to what I'm doing. And the other side of that is called the ISO principle. And the ISO principle has to do with mood. So what do I play if I go in and somebody's crying? Is crying always a negative? No. Contrary to many tick box exercises, tears are often a good thing. It depends, and you have to make a judgment call. And if someone's crying, do I go in and play something cheerful, or do I play something sad? You probably know by now I'm going to play something sad. And the reason for that is I want to connect, I want to entrain, but also I want to validate them. I want to validate that I see where that person is, that I know that this person is sad and that I see it and that I am here to support that. So I might go in and play. And I might, if they've kind of, that person is now connecting with me and seeing that I see and feel that they're sad, we might eventually make that same piece might go from And if I do that over a period of time, that might bring that listener, that person at that time on board with the sadness and maybe gradually into something a little more bright. Or maybe we'll stay in very sad music. You know, there's been studies done about why when we are feeling sad, sometimes we want to hear something very sad and really listen to sad music, and it emphasizes the sadness we feel. And sometimes we want to put on something really, you know, jaunty and happy to pull us out of it. And that's individual to the situation, what's going on, and it's going to change. So that's one of the other very important things to remember, that everything I'm saying, these are tools and ideas, and the truth of the matter is once you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. So nothing works for everybody, and it won't work all the time for anybody either. It will change all the time. It's part of the excitement, and it's part of just all our individualities, you know. And to remember that if you're playing music or involved with someone living with dementia who's older, they bring their entire life story, their personality, their experiences with them. And therefore, everybody's going to be different. These are just some overall truths, the ones about, you know, fast and slow and sad and happy music. These kinds of basic tools can help. Excuse me. So I think I'll play something else here, and I want you to think about what was a type of music you might have hated when you were growing up, and now you really enjoy it. Think about that. Some kind of music, you know, that you really just thought, oh, I don't like that kind of music, and now you're quite fond of it. How do you feel now? Do any of you recognize that? That was the Allemande of the first solo cello suite in G major by Johann Sebastian Bach. How many of you listen to classical music? How many of you kind of think, classical music's not for me? And how many of you that feel that way liked what you just heard? Because it's just another story. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to have gone to years of education. The reason that it is useful to know more about classical music is that sometimes it helps guide what you listen for. But if it's done in the right way, it should, and I hope this did, be just another story, another lovely story that you get to listen to, nothing complicated. And that, for me, I hated opera and country and Western music when I was growing up, probably because my parents loved both. But I love both of those now, particularly opera. I absolutely love opera, but I hated it as a kid. So that is important to acknowledge for ourselves, because just because someone in their 80s you are told they liked the Beatles when they were young, quite right. And you can play some Beatles, and we're going to talk about that right now, about familiar music versus new music. But if you do play the Beatles for them, I love the Beatles. I grew up with the Beatles. I'm a child of the 60s. But do you want to hear the Beatles 24/7? Is that the only music you ever want to hear for the rest of your life, which could be, 10 years or a year or a month? It doesn't really matter. And my answer for me is absolutely not. I listen to the Beatles occasionally, but very rarely. And I enjoy it when I do, and I remember all the words, and that's fantastic. And you'll hear stories all the time. It's very known and well documented that familiar music goes right into our memory bank and can transport us back to a place we haven't been for a long time. So if I play the right piece of music for you that was played at a wedding or some other significant date in your life, I could show you a picture of that wedding and you might remember some things about it. You might be able to tell me some things. But if I play that piece, or it comes on the radio and you're just kind of cleaning the kitchen, that music will take you back right away to where you were that day, what the weather was like, what you had to eat, who else was there, what everyone was wearing. Music can take us back and transport us in that way. So it transports us both back in time, if the right piece comes on that has a significance, and it can also take us out of time, and it can do both at the same time. You can go to a concert in the old days when we went to concerts, and if you're in a grouchy mood and you don't like the music and you weren't really wanting to go, that 2-hour concert might seem like it went on forever. And the person sitting next to you who was really excited and really wanted to go and loves that kind of music will say, my God, that 2 hours went by so fast. It went by in no time at all. Same amount of real time on a clock, but different in terms of our interpretation of the time. And because music is based on rhythm and time, it even has more of a strength of moving us in and out of real time. That's very heady. I don't know if that made sense, but this is a short overview. So in terms of familiar music, yes, it's very valuable to play, but I would argue that because someone used to hate country and Western, you might be surprised now. That person might, if you play something well, they might love it. I often tell the story of one of my bosses whose father's was had loved music all his life, and he developed dementia. He came to live with them. They thought, this will be easy. We'll play the music we know he loves. He didn't want to hear any music in those last years of his life at all. What he ended up loving and becoming completely involved and engaged with was flower arranging. I doubt that he was introduced to that growing up. I don't even know how he was introduced to that, quite frankly, in his later years, but he was, and he loved it. So we need to always challenge people, allow people to experience new things, try different foods, try different music, meet people, because you don't know. You just can't know what's going on for someone else. And I really think it's a crime to lock people into only familiar music, because that takes us away from being able to experience new things. And so, with that familiar music idea, though, that's a really important, I will say, that is an important touchstone of all the work that we do with dementia, because there is that possibility of remembering and being transported, but to also know that not all memories, even the most innocent tune, can be a good idea. Sometimes the most innocent childhood tune can spark a very dark memory. So if someone gets very upset and agitated, you have to stop immediately. That tune is not working because it's doing something that's bringing up a bad memory. And the only other thing I'm going to talk about is that idea of improvisation and how important that is. And there are some amazing projects that have happened. There's one called Music for Life at the Wigmore Hall, particularly, that you can look on that website and see some examples where it is wonderful musicians co-creating incredible on-the-spot improvisation with people living with dementia. And they've been doing this since the 90s, and it's very powerful. So with that, if you have any more questions, I give workshops, I give concert recital talks online on Zoom. So please contact me at Claire at drclairegarabedian.com. I think you'll have that in your writing, and I'll just play us out with something. I'm not sure what yet. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Hello, I'm Dr. Claire Garabedian, and I'd like to invite you to a unique and special event on Saturday, July 18th. I'm going to do a Baroque cello recital, and on that I will do some solo Bach, but I'm also going to play popular music, Celtic music, probably some improvisation, and I'm going to discuss the work I've been doing for many years as a therapeutic musician playing for people living with dementia, and also as a researcher. And I'm also going to speak about the work that's being done out there, both as a researcher and therapeutically, for people who have cognitive issues or communication difficulties. I'll be asking you as the audience questions. I'll be open to you asking me questions. And it'll be a way for you to understand how we all act when we're listening to music, when we share that experience. This is going to be something that would be of interest, I think, to anybody who, yes, loves the Baroque cello and especially the Bach suites, but also has no interest in classical music. It'll also be for children, people who are caring for or care about someone living with dementia or are just curious. So please do contact me if you have any questions. This will be on Saturday, the 18th of July at 7 p.m. GMT, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much. Okay. I think we should all, including especially me, take a deep breath. Thank you. So, nothing like changing key in the middle of something I didn't expect to do, but that's all right. Um, and that that was obviously a medley of various things, kind of representing a lot of sort of where I've been at and where we've all been at in some ways. But I started with a Scottish tune because I feel more Scottish than ever right now, which is called the Lee Rig, a Robbie Burns tune that I learned for Fiona and Dermot's wedding at the end of August. And then let's see, what did I do? Oh, and then I went into a little of Simple Gifts, which is very important to me on a number of levels. First of all, it sort of felt very calming to me recently to play for various reasons, and I realized this will sound better. Um, and I was playing Simple Gifts also in honor of a dear friend of mine who I called Mama Johns, who I don't know if Susan's come yet or not, but her mom, I played at her Quaker, her mother, Mama Johns, was a dear friend of mine, and I played at her Quaker funeral many years ago now on Walden Island in Seattle area in Washington State. And it's just a very important tune to me and to the Quakers that are here as well. And then I went into then I played something that I'd love Fiona to say correctly, but anyway, it's Women of Ireland. In Irish, it sounds very different than that, much better. But that's a tune that I also learned for this wedding of Fiona and Dermot's, and I was so glad to get to learn these two tunes. It was really nice to get to learn those, and I just had to play a little of America the Beautiful in honor of, a country that I am from, and I have many of my favorite friends and family are from there, and it's been a hurtful place for quite a long time, and so it's nice to get to play it in a little more positive way. But I also did that as a, you know, that from if you've looked at my website at all, I work as I'm a cellist. And for those of you who have been on my concerts before, this is a different cello. It's going to sound way different than what you've heard me on before. This is my modern cello. Its name is Frag, which is short for fragile, named by a high school friend of mine many, many decades ago. And I work as I have done research and a PhD and therapeutic music with people both nearing the end of life and people living with dementia. And those are my two main interests. And the idea that is a really important one to me that I worked on with my PhD was about this idea of a sonic haven. So I was thinking about this concert today, and I was thinking about the list of people who were going to be coming, and I was thinking about how not only geographically spread out you are, but how in my lifespan, I mean, we could spend this whole week. The ties are very lovely, but they're all very separate. And Zoom does something very magical, I think, in order, to get everybody together, because this couldn't happen. I mean, I wouldn't be playing with all of you in an audience. It's very unlikely. So it's a great blessing for me. And I feel like that sonic haven idea was the idea that came up when I did my work with in the care homes for my PhD. And I've done papers on this with Fiona and talked about this a lot, but it was a really important one for me as a musician. And that is that I've been performing all my life, concerts, doing all that like a lot of the musicians that are on here do. But I hadn't really thought about how important it is what we do in terms of creating a space, which I dare say the world needs more of, not less, while we're in the turmoil we're in the world, where music can create a space. And I feel like this, to me, this is a space that we are all being able to kind of be in, and we can be within this space, and the music is a circle around us, is what I see it as a sonic envelope wherein then other things happen. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I'm working on kind of the feedback I've gotten from the prior concerts, things I've done, these talks, sometimes I assume people know more about what I do or where I'm coming from, and I forget that that's not necessarily true. So for some of you, this will be repetitive, and I'm sorry if it is. But so that setting the space was what that was. Now my talking has just completely ruined the setting of that space. And as Susan often does to me, she'd go like this. So without any further conversation, there will be time for you to have conversation. Don't worry. I'm going to play something that I do need music for now, and I might need to move a little forward. And I want to ask you a question to think about, though. There were these questions. I'm not going to go into where I got all these different questions, but there's some questions you can think about things like, have you ever had the experience of a song or a piece of music being already intimately familiar the very first time you heard it? So think about that. Think about when you listen to a tune, you know, and I don't care what genre it is, and you've never heard it before and you instantly either really like it or you just, it's not working for you. And it's just an existential question. So just a minute. Okay. So I'll explain after, but just one of the things is, it's very important to me that you not think too much during these concerts, okay? This is a time to take a break, so just listen and let the music, ideally my job is to be your storyteller for this, okay? So I'm just, you know, the person in the ticket booth giving the little ticket a punch for the ride. So just chill out and don't ask too many questions of yourself, and don't ask any of me. So, has anybody heard that before? I wouldn't imagine, maybe Chris, but I don't know. And that's one of my other points. So that was a classical piece of music. which you probably could surmise. It was by a guy named Franck Combe, and he was alive. I looked up this to get the right dates, 1808 to 1884. And what I know about him is, I mean, so for me, that's the closest I'm going to get because I cannot play the piano at all, to Chopin. So all the pieces that Chopin wrote, which many of you will have heard of Chopin, wonderful Polish composer who wrote just beautiful, beautiful things for the piano mostly. But he wrote some gorgeous music for the cello, and it's all because it only takes one great musician to get a bunch of great music written. And there's a few examples of that tonight. But he was a friend of Mendelssohn's and Chopin. And Chopin, all the music that has cello in it by Chopin is because of this guy. And this is just one of his little exercises. He's got these books and books, and there's a lot of music I don't even know that he's written. But I love this little book of these little etudes or studies. Yeah, they're literally called studies that this man wrote in, somewhere in the late 1700s, because they are 1900s, sorry, late 1900s, and because they're very, they just evoke very much that I feel like he was influenced by Chopin. And I'm hoping that what you got from that, because I do on purpose want to do some things that I don't expect you to know, because I'm very much of the feeling that the music that I have played for people living with dementia, I'm going to send you all a link to a very amazing thing that was on recently with some of you have heard it and some of you have sent it to me even, about a man with dementia here who was given 4 notes by his son to improvise on, and he did this beautiful, beautiful exposition, this beautiful improv, and then one of the local big symphonies here created a piece on it. And it's beautiful, and it was very inspiring to hear him improvise on it the first time, just him on the piano. And he has fairly advanced dementia, and he can do this very complicated improvisation. So my point being there, that one of the things that is a big problem is, to me it's a problem, is that what you'll hear people say about dementia is there's all kinds of, well, there's research, there's anecdotes of, people being there and seemingly not being able to respond to anything, being completely not responding. And then, you play something like, how many people knew what that was? Did anybody not know what that was? So You Are My Sunshine, and you will know that piece even if you haven't heard it in 50 years, even if you haven't heard it since you were a little kid, you will remember that. It will come to you. And that kind of a piece, yes, that's very important, because yes, I experienced it during my PhD work and afterwards, and other people have, where somebody who seemingly is not communicating starts singing along, sings all the words to a tune. I played for one woman particularly who I could play 2 notes of anything, literally any pop tune from the 40s and 50s, 60s, and she would be on it and knew all the words to all the verses, which is much more than I could do on a good day at the best of my time. And that does create this root. It creates a place. It's true. It creates a stability and a sense of identity and a safety. There's a safety in that. You hear something like You Are My Sunshine, and first of all, it's a very sweet, happy tune. There's a lovely thing on BBC. They have a show called Soul Music, I think it's called, and they did one, for instance. They did a whole show on that tune. And they pick a tune or a piece, and then they go, and I don't know where they find the people, but they have all these interviews with people about why that piece is so important to them. So that's one of the ones they did a whole show on what it meant. And that's really important, to think about where these pieces, where you might have first heard this. Does this bring you back to someplace way back in your past? Because it will. And music has the power to do that more than just about anything else, where it will just, you'll be listening on the radio, something will come on, and it will take you right back to somewhere it's not in your control. It's actually out of your control. Music is incredibly powerful for that. Really, smell is probably the only other one, the only other sense that's as strong for that, but we often lose our sense of smell. And even if you have some sense of hearing, this can work in terms of music taking you somewhere. But I always, I'm kind of like I'm on a mission, it feels like, to also really importantly say that while that is important, it's equally important to keep challenging and keep new pieces, doing new things, trying new types of music, trying new opportunities of ways of listening, and also food and everything else. But that it shouldn't be that you get a diagnosis of dementia and you are then sentenced. I feel very strongly about this. You shouldn't be sentenced. I don't want to be sentenced to listening to the same kind of music I listened to when I was 20. I'm not even sure what that would be right now, and I don't know if all you would know what that was. But the famous story is the person who had the "I Love the Beatles" on the thing on their little "All About Me" they have here in the UK. This thing, and it said that this woman loved the Beatles, and she had no speech, and a very nice staff person thought that was great and started playing Beatles music all the time. And I always think of that because I grew up at the time when the Beatles, yes, they were one of my favorite bands, of course, because I'm 59 and a half. But I haven't listened to the Beatles in quite a long time, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to hear the Beatles 24/7. Pretty certain of that. And I can understand where that goodness comes from, but I don't think it's a good idea. And I think it's actually really important to keep challenging. So I'm hoping that that little tune I just played was something that you could say, I didn't know it, but it could take you on a little bit of a road anyway, on a little bit of a journey, because that's my point with something like that. And to go on, I'm going to play you now a full-on Scottish medley in honor of where I live. And the sad part is, as Mari is an amazing musician. She's on here under David, but that's not her name. And Mari is an incredible musician who lives down Mari, you're on your name. That's nice. She's an amazing fiddler and singer and composer and dancer and everything else, and creator in general. And I'll tell you towards the end more about where you can come on Sunday, well, during the day for some of you, evening for some of you, the Mari's Campbell Cayleys, which are fantastic, lovely place. You can hear all kinds of amazing eclectic music being done. You never know what's going to happen there. And anyway, but I still have to use music for a lot of this, which I feel sad about. So that's the way it is. That'll change, but not while I was moving. So I'm going to first play a tune that I am going to introduce, and then I'll talk about the rest of it later. The first tune, though, is a tune that was written for me by a violinist that Mari might or might not know, a Scottish woman named Essa. Essa is an amazing fiddler and recorder player and cello player and singer and I don't know what else. And when she was 16, when I was turning 50, she wrote me a tune called Bad Dog. And that was because she was in the Baroque Orchestra I was running, and I'm very dog oriented, and I used to say she was the first violinist, and she had this habit of playing very fiddly like when we were supposed to be playing Baroque like. And I would say, "Bad dog, Essa, don't stop sliding into things," and things like that. So she decided to write me a tune called Bad Dog, which I was very honored with. So I'm going to play that first. And it says, "Fast and Fierce." And now, this is, and now I'll go on with some other tunes. And I'm gonna just say one thing about these Scottish tunes. I'm still just an honorary Scot. I do have citizenship now, but thank goodness. But anyway, but I one of the things I learned right after I moved to Scotland in 2007, I heard the Young Trad players, and I didn't even know what that was, but they have a competition here every year for the young traditional Scottish players. And I never cease to be absolutely blown away. I try to go to the finals every year in Glasgow, and I guess they'll be online this year, of the incredible power of the musicians and the musicianship and the pride and the sense of place that these young musicians have. And I mean, the music is so complicated, you can't even believe how complicated it is. I sometimes have no idea what the time ratios and things, and the skill. And these guys are never going to make very much money playing traditional Scottish music, pretty much guaranteed. Many of the fiddlers could play most of the classical fiddlers I know outside the ballpark, and yet this is what they want to be doing. And it's so inspiring to me. So that's where I started with this. I am not going to try to mimic what they can do. That's not why I gave you that introduction. So So, that also was an example of what I love to talk about, which is entrainment, which anybody who's heard me talk about any of this before has heard me talk about, but it can never be talked about too much, I think, which is the idea that started out slow, not counting the Bad Dog tune. It started out slowly, and you kind of go into a place, and then it gradually moved into getting faster and then much faster. And I'm hoping that at least for some of you, you could feel that there was some energy that came in from that. Now, that wasn't really the way I would do it if I was playing for somebody, and there are some wonderful therapeutic musicians on this call as well. But the idea that this was such an eye-opener for me, that when I first started getting trained with music and transitional healing program, which is where several of us on this call were trained in the US, I'd been playing music all my life, been performing all my life. You know, it had never occurred to me ever. It was always all about, really, if you want to get honest, the way I was trained, it's all about me. It was all about, you know, was I playing all the right notes? Was it all, you know, all that stuff? And God, it was so boring. I mean, I'm so glad I'm not, it's good. It's good getting older in a lot of ways. And that's one of them. It's not where I am anymore. And I, I was astounded to find out firsthand about this idea of entrainment, which was simply put, and I'll give you a couple of examples of what has happened for me with this, but if somebody is, one of the things people talk about a lot with dementia is they'll say that, you know, one of the big difficulties, well, is communication, first of all, which is what I'm all about, which is why it's interesting to me, but also about what you call it challenging behaviors, which I hate that term, and most of us that work within the dementia realm hate that term because it's, well, I'll explain in a minute as we go. It's not challenging behaviors, but agitation, being frustrated, being very anxious and irritated, and sometimes lashing out, all sorts of things. And it is, I suppose you could say, challenging for the person who is the caretaker, you know, the carer, because it's challenging. What do you do when somebody is very agitated but isn't being able to say why they're agitated? But what I was astounded to find out was, you know, if I ask you, what kind of music should I play? I walk into a room and somebody's really agitated. Some of you know the answer to this either because you've been to things of mine or because you've been trained. But, you know, what would some of you that don't know the answer before automatically want to do? What kind of music would you pick? You know, would you pick lullabies? Raise your hands if you feel like you'd play something soothing. Don't cheat. You guys that know already, don't answer. Okay, so lullabies. Do I hear any yeses for that? And don't worry, I'm not going to make fun of you. It's not about, it is a little bit of a trick question, but I would have answered that. Or will you play something really, you know, rambunctious and agitated or high energy? Who's for that? Don't cheat. Okay, it is the latter. It is you want to play something high energy. And the reason is simply, some of you have been braver than me, including my dear mother who's on here and had kids. I knew better because I knew what I was like as a kid, so therefore did not have a kid. Tell me this, you that have been moms, you brave women who have been moms, and you brave dads, when your little kid was agitated and having a tantrum, which of course I never did, but for those of you that did have kids that might have done that, did you ever try to calm them down and go, now, dear, you know, it's okay? Did you ever try that? Did you try it? And did it work? It did work? Fiona, it worked? Don't mess me up. Because my theory is, anyway, that I don't think it works very often, and possibly some of you may have some residing bruises or scars still from having tried to do that. Certainly never worked for me. Um, because if you're agitated, you need to get somebody on board in your vibration, in your place. You need to play agitated music. You need to be, go, okay, I see you're really upset, because otherwise then you'll get that person's attention, possibly, not guaranteed, and then you can possibly decompress the situation. No guarantees, but you have a chance. You play a lullaby or something soothing, you're going to make no connection. It's very unlikely you're going to make any connection. It might happen, and nothing. This is one of the things that's very important. There's a saying by Tom Kitwood that's very important. He was a very important person in dementia work back in the 90s and 80s. If you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. Oh, good. I was hoping this was going to happen. I do not have guns going off outside. It was Guy Fawkes night here, bonfire night. We have here on the 5th of November, and well, it goes on for a few days, just like it does there for July 4th. So excuse me, I had a feeling they might do this kid tonight. So anyway, an example of this was that I was asked to go in for an emergency intervention. There's a paper I did on this that is on my website. It's very short, but it was a very dramatic experience for me, because this person who I was playing for, he was an amateur Scottish musician. He was very good, and I felt very out of my depth playing for him, quite frankly, because I had just moved to Scotland. I didn't know anything about Scottish music, and this guy was the real deal. I mean, he was Scottish, and he played the accordion. We had some amazing duets, accordion and cello. Would have made many modern composers very jealous. But and he had a very unfortunate situation with his dementia, which was that he was a very sweet, kind. He'd been a gardener all his life, very sweet person, but he had a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation coming out with his dementia. He had no speech and hadn't for quite a long time, and he became I knew about this when I first met him, but I didn't see it till many months into our relationship. He was getting progressively worse in that he would go into these it really was another personality. That's the only way I can explain it. And he would just become very disorientated. He seemed to be going back into some kind of old memories. Who knows? We don't know, because he didn't have any speech. Anyway, but very agitated, and he would strike out. I mean, it was very difficult. So they called me in for an emergency session with him. And that should tell you something by itself, that the manager of this care home, I by then had been going there quite a lot, and they didn't know what to do. They couldn't get close enough to him to give him any medications, which he needed badly, because he was just so over the top agitated and uncomfortable, and they didn't know what to do. And they knew that we had a good relationship and that he loved music. So they asked me if I would come in, and as it happened, someone had canceled, and I went in immediately. He was in the hallway. He was very agitated and somewhere else. I mean, it was very clear he was not in the hallway, but it was a very intense situation. And I just said to him, why don't you come? I said, hello. I said, I've got my cello. Why don't you come in and I'll play you some music? And he did. He came in and sat down on the edge of his bed, still like jaw clenched, very tense. And I just started playing. I mean, this went on for many hours, actually, of me playing really agitated, everything I could think of, trying not to stop very much. I stop a few times, and we'd chuckle a little bit. He would chuckle. He was tapping his foot. He would eat a little bit. We had a few jokes, and then he would get agitated again, and I'd start playing again. And eventually, even the doctor, his medical doctor, had been called in. She stood in the doorway, and she was amazed to see what we were doing, because she'd known him a long time, and she was amazed to see him interacting with me. because he did eventually calm down enough to get fed, to eat something, to get his medications, to calm down. And if that probably was just for that day and it didn't solve the problem, but at least for that moment it made a difference. So that entrainment idea is very important. And what I didn't do at the time but should have, I did this sort of a thing before, but I'm sorry, but this mic is just completely not sitting in its, sorry, I just have to get it to, I don't know why it's okay, well, that's at least better. Okay, all right. So for instance, if I do something like if I go I'm just gonna do this one So you can, in a pinch, take anything. Take, I don't care what it is, a C major scale, and do whatever you need to do to make that work. If you're in a sudden situation with somebody where you just feel like you need to do something to grab a hold of that connection with someone, if that makes sense. I'm going to play a piece now that is in honor actually of a number of things. First, I felt, especially until just an hour before this little experience, that I just needed things to calm me down. So that was one of the reasons I was playing this. And also, I was, Will, your screen sharing, please turn that off. Will, turn off your screen sharing, dear. Okay, well, I'm going to just play this. This is also in honor of my grandfather who had dementia, I now realize. And Will, you're sharing your screen. Okay, let's see if I can stop it. Yes. Great. Okay. Hopefully that didn't work. Okay. Well, I guess you're all going to just watch Will's screen, unfortunately. So, I'm playing this in honor of my grandfather who died in a nursing home. Thank you, Will. He died in a nursing home many, many decades ago now, and it was a bad death. It was a bad ending. It was dementia. We didn't realize that at the time. It was the 80s. It was a bad time, or whenever the O.J. Simpson stupid trial was. It was then. And I would go in. He had been a trumpet player. Our connection to each other was through my music playing. And the piece that always made him smile, even towards the end, even when things were really not too good, was this. So. So, did anybody not know what that was? And if you didn't, did it evoke any kind of an image? It's okay that you didn't know it. It's actually good. Fiona's gesturing, dancing. That was The Swan by Saint-Saëns, and it certainly evokes, to me anyway, a swan on the water, and there's a lot of swans where I am, so it's kind of nice. I'm going to play you some very different music now to kind of, first I'm going to play you a couple of tunes by Eugene Frazon. Frazon, I can never pronounce his name right, but Frazon, I think is the way you say it, who's a wonderful cellist and a wonderful jazz cellist particularly. And one of the great things that's happened during this kind of a lockdown time is that I got to go and take a course with him over Zoom that I would have never been able to afford or get to if it had not been for the lockdown. So it was all on improv for cellists, which was great because it was all about where things sit on the cello, which was great. So these are a couple of cool pieces. I'm still kind of getting my hand around, my head and my hand around, sorry about this creaky seat. He does amazing things plucking with the cello. He does amazing things that I'm not ever close to, but I'm getting more coordinated with it. So this first piece I love because it's called Street Corner, and he did it on purpose to evoke the sound of the mbira. And I've spent a lot of time in Zimbabwe, and the mbira is a thumb harp, basically, but it's in a big gourd to make it sound bigger. And it's a beautiful, it's a very spiritually important instrument in Zimbabwe. And I cannot play it. I used to have one that I sold to a Zimbabwean here because I felt stupid having it, frankly. So this is as close as I can get to it, and I was happy he wrote something like this. So. That's in progress. I think there's more to that. But this next piece by him, though, is very cool. It's called Yellow Cello. And if you know the tune Birdland, there's an mbira. Jenny is holding up a version of an mbira right there. Yes, indeed. A very small one, but there is one right there. Thank you, dear. Very good. This piece, if you know the tune Birdland, jazz tune, this is what influenced him for this one. So So they're just cool pieces. I'm really delighted to be kind of branching out. And again, I'm pretty sure none of you have heard those except possibly Chris. Um, and it's okay to hear new tunes is kind of my point there. It's okay to be introduced to new stuff. Um, so it's getting near the end of an hour, and I don't want, if any of you need to leave, you should. But I wanted to, there's two things. I want to first, before I do anything else, I need to just see how to do this. Just a minute. Okay. So I was going to do a little Britain, which is something that some of you may or may not know anything about Britain. Some of you will, for sure. And it's some of my favorite music for the cello. First of all, I mean, I guess I never know quite what people want to know about, quite honestly, on this. And I'm adverse to doing it in a, some people have suggested I have a serious topic and then I do it. And I'm just not that way right now. So if you want to come to my workshop, it's very focused on specifically music and dementia and what you do and the different skills that are needed for it. But that's not exactly what this is. So it's around that topic. But are there any questions any of you have or anything like that? Anything you're going, God, I wish you would talk more about this, or just shut up and stop talking as much as I do?
No, I think it's all great.
Thanks, William.
And incidentally, I had to learn how to turn that thing off.
That's all right, dear. It's all right.
Oh,
Nothing terrible was up.
Okay, the thing that when you were playing that, I'm preparing to start my second album, and
Right.
I was listening to Beethoven, and
Right.
I thought, oh yeah. So I came up with this idea, and then I thought about Van Gogh on his painting when you were playing that, and I thought, well, so it seems all about energy.
Yep, that's
And
right.
and so like Beethoven, he'll be playing something, and then other instruments will come in and do something completely else, but it'll complement what he did.
Right,
So
Will.
so the music that I want to do now is I want to have like pop music, but then like have strings come in and do the same kind of stuff that Beethoven was doing.
Excellent. We could talk about that later, okay, dear?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Will. Are you okay, you guys, with me playing some Britain? Are you fed up? Because you can also be fed up. You're allowed to be fed up.
More music, please.
Not at all.
Less talking.
Go
As
on.
Susan
Play
would
Britain.
say, she'd go, shh.
It's beautiful.
Okay, so thank you, dear. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to play parts of this. This is Benjamin Britten's first solo suite for cello. Now, those of you who have been on my other concerts or know me or anything about me have heard loads of Bach. My mom has said that I play too much Bach. I don't know if there's such a thing as too much Bach, but we can talk about that another time. The Britten suite, this Britten suite is very important to me. I first played it for my graduate recital in '86 for my bachelor's of music at New England Conservatory. I've played it various times. Rita, who many of you have heard, my Baroque cello, who's sitting right over there, when she turned 300, I played it as the tune from the 20th century, because I did 4 centuries of music on one concert. I'm not going to do that ever again, but I did do it. And yes, hi Rita. She's my pal over there. And this suite, it's a celebration for me. This whole concert is in many ways because I really lost my way. Doing that PhD and stuff was great. It really was, Fiona. But I stopped being a cellist, really, especially when I moved to the Midlands. And I feel like I'm just getting back my chops, especially on the modern cello, which requires a lot more strength than I've had. So I'm building up gradually, and this suite I hadn't played in decades. So, well, Rita turned 300 in 1702. So I'm sorry, I played it whenever that was, 20 minus 2, so 18 years ago I played it last. And I want to, it's both, first of all, I think it's a tribute always for me playing this to Danny Malkin, who was a lovely cellist and a very dear friend of mine who died way too young. Back in now many years ago, and he was the one who introduced me to Britten. I didn't know anything about Britten. Very famous British composer. I think he is the equal of Bach, although a very different type of equal. And this piece is an incredible piece, and I'm going to actually talk a little in between movements. I'm not going to do all the movements, but I think it's a hard piece to digest on a first hearing. You need to just sit back and relax. You don't need to figure anything out. Britten is not the simplest stuff, but this is such a beautiful. So it starts with a canto, which is basically a how would you describe a canto? It's a melody that goes throughout this entire suite, and the suite should be done theoretically by memory because it should be done without any stops between any of the movements. Neither of those things has ever happened from me, but I'm going to do, so I want to play this canto first, and if Susan's still there, she's heard this a lot and she loves this piece. Different Susan, sorry Susan. Yeah, you too, dear. But yeah, Susan has heard this and really loved it, and we've had a good time with this, so just a minute, she may have gone to sleep. You'll see why it's important for me to be very much in tune for this one. Okay. Okay. Then we're going to skip over to a really beautiful lament and another canto version of that same canto and a serenata, which I dedicate always to Papa John's. So, and the thing I'll add about this is coming back to this piece. You know, the verb for the cello and for making music is to play, and that's what it's been for me. I'm doing this purely for the fun of it now, and it makes it so much nicer to be doing. And what is that sound? Is that me?
Somebody might have unmuted.
Somebody is unmuted. So hold on, I'm going to just mute all. Okay. Great. Okay. No. Is it me? No. Okay, Marlene is not muted. There we go. Now it's muted. Okay, good. All right. So anyway, is that one thing that Britten does in pretty much everything he writes, but particularly in this, is that idea of a sonic haven. In my opinion, if you can just sit back and let this just all surround you, he creates a place. He just does. He's amazing at that, I think. So So, are you okay for me to do more, or should I stop? You can leave. There's two more movements I'm going to do of this. This is the last of this is the third canto, and then it goes into a bourdon. And what he does with the cello is amazing. Rostropovich was a big guy, and he was an amazing cellist. And yeah, so anyway, I'll just make sure. Okay. So thank you, you guys. That's that was a Bourdon, and I have a mic also. Interesting experience trying to find the mute. So that he does just a lot of amazing things with colors and ways of playing the cello, and it's again example like the Franchomme I played earlier, that was Chopin was inspired to write all those pieces. And thank God for Rostropovich, because we have a lot of great stuff as cellists because of him. And among them was all the pieces that Britten wrote for this guy with a massive, he was, well, you may not know this, but Rostropovich was a massively huge guy. He was like 6 feet tall and giant. So all the music was really written for these, big paws of hands that he had. And I just, we're so lucky to have this stuff. So yeah, I guess if I'd love to have any questions any of you have, really would be, you're open to unmute. And I think, let me just double check that I've done this right. Just a minute. Yeah.
I think we're open.
Great. Hello?
Hello?
Here we go. Okay.
Yep.
So that's a little snippet of kind of what I'm doing and why I do it, but it's really, it's to give you an understanding, but it was also, again, as I say, to, I love this thing of Zoom, of bringing people together. And I feel like music is what I do, but it's also what can bring people together. And I thought we would maybe need more soloists than we do tonight, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining about that, but it's been a jangly kind of a year in general. And, the cello has definitely been the thing that has kept me above water all my life, but especially these days. And I see my mom has voted with her feet, I think, and left, which is not surprising. But she, she got me started on the cello because there was music always around. My grandparents played the trumpet, and there weren't any trumpets available when I went to a school that had a free music classes, and all they had is cello and violin. They never mentioned viola, Rebecca. And thank God. But anyway, so I didn't know what either of those things were, and I came home fairly disconsolate about that. And my mom thought about it, and in true motherly fashion thought, play the cello because the violin is very screechy when you start. Good point. Right, Jenny? So unless you have a great teacher like Jenny, which I wasn't going to have a teacher for a while, so it would have been very painful. So in a good mothering style, I started the cello, and I'm really grateful that that's what I started. And it's taken me literally all over the world, and literally all over the world in many different ways. So, I want to do, I've done these live, and possibly some of you there in St. Andrews went many, many years ago. I did in Salvador Chapel. I did a live concert where I was doing my PhD, and all I could think of was my PhD, but I knew I wanted to keep doing performing. I'm sure it was on the Baroque cello. I'm sure I wasn't doing anything on modern cello at that point, but I did a concert and I spoke about the music I was doing, the work I was doing, and I got a few people upset because I started the concert with You Are My Sunshine very spontaneously. I had no idea what I was going to do. And, but so I like getting people to understand a bit more about the bigger picture of what music does. And yes, about the work that I do with people living with dementia, but it's really about, for all of us, about music being a connector, and music being a place where we can go inside of a sonically created place where we can all be equals regardless of whatever our backstories are.
Can I say, Claire?
Yes, who's speaking?
It's Marlene.
Hi.
Marlene.
Hi, Maureen.
Marlene.
Oh, Marlene. I'm sorry. You're not speaking very clear. Hi, Marlene.
Can I take this opportunity to say hello to two lovely friends that I haven't seen for a long time? Jill and Busha.
Yes, it's very nice to see them there.
Hiya. How are you doing?
So why don't you
How are you
guys
both
talk
doing?
afterwards,
I,
Marlene?
I think
Yeah, we can.
when you speak to you.
Yeah, you okay?
They're all in Scotland. These are all Scots. Just to orient you guys.
Great,
So,
a
does
great
anybody have any
country.
questions or any? Yes, Fiona?
Just a wonderful performance, Claire.
Thank you, Marlene. Good to see you.
Claire, that last piece of music, was that by Britain?
That was all Britain, yes. And that Bourdon, that strange
cool.
drone piece.
Amazing. Loved it.
Isn't it? I mean, just it takes you. What I was thinking when I was working on this now, as I say, is it just, even while I'm working on it, it feels like it's a, he certainly understood about a sonic haven. That's all I can say, because there's something he does where he just evokes something very outer worldly, or takes you in, or I don't even know how to verbalize it. But yeah, he's quite special, and this is a great piece. It's two more suites I've never touched, so maybe someday I'll get to those. So
Really good, thank you.
Margaret,
Yeah.
Jenny, are you just waving? I can't tell.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming to this.
Claire.
And,
Right there. Thank you.
grazie mille for coming, you two.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, Laura.
All right. I was really interested in a project about calming people down with music, and so connecting with people through music. And I was wondering, since my field is another one, like landscape, I was wondering if you've ever had projects related to landscapes and music.
So doing something with landscape and music?
Yeah.
That's a really good question, and there has been some stuff, and there's a psychological term called that is soundscapes, and there has been work done with that. And I mean, in general, I mean, there's been modern pieces and all sorts of great things done with the landscape and music, but I think it would be something worth investigating more, doing something, you know, obviously not for the next 6 months or so in Scotland, but, you know, at some point when there's sunshine and not going to be rain. But I think there botanicals. Yes, Donna? Wait, you're muted. I think. No, you're not. I can't.
Wait,
hear you.
okay, now,
There you
now?
go. Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
I forgot
yeah.
to turn my microphone on.
Okay, good.
There is a composer who has composed soundscapes for the Saratoga Spa State Park up in Saratoga Springs and for Central Park. And you put on headphones or whatever, earbuds, and depending where you go in the park, the music changes
Oh, that's lovely.
to go along with it.
And we heard something, didn't we, Rebecca? That guy who was doing that amazing stuff way back when we went to that music and medicine thing. Remember that guy who was doing something really high tech at MIT? So that reminds me of that. Could even be the same person, honestly.
This was a female composer.
Oh, okay, this was a guy. This was a team,
Yeah.
actually. This is a very high tech thing.
Right.
That's very cool, Donna. Thank you for that. Because I do think there is some wonderful stuff already being done, Lara. I think that it's something to investigate.
Yeah, like it's really interesting because music can really touch different sensibilities, you know?
Yes, exactly. Which is the thing, you know, that's what I'm kind of here to remind you of. And it can be new tunes that you've never heard, and it can be something you have a real heart connection with from before. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Glad to have you guys there. Thank you.
Hi,
Yes,
hi,
Jill?
Claire.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Claire. I just
Hi,
wanted
not
to.
Katie. Hello, Alice.
Well, it's actually Alison. I know
Yes,
it looks
hi.
like it's Katie, doesn't it? Just wanted to say it was fantastic. I really, really loved it. And the piece that I liked, which was my favourite piece, was the Swan. I thought it was
Oh.
beautiful. I just, it reminded me a bit like Schindler's List, that sort
Yeah.
of, it was very, just very emotional. Yeah,
Oh,
lovely. Thank you.
Allison. There's probably reasons for that, honestly, because there is there's all sorts of things to be talked about different the different scales, the different modes, the different tempos, the different time signatures, the different instruments. The cello is very much like the human voice, and it's been very useful. You know, when I played in the care homes and things, there's something there. It's nonverbal, but it can be very much a. I mean, my voice range is exactly the same as the cello, except not as high. And I think there is something to what you said. I'm sure it would be interesting to look at the key signatures and things of Schindler's List music, for instance. There could be some things, there could be some real reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Hugh, who's there with the amazing umbrellas, he's roping me in gradually to a very interesting project that they're doing in St. Andrews with music and soundscapes. That's the best way that is a big conversation, huge conversation, but really interesting work around music and sound and place and environment and kind of atmosphere and all sorts of stuff. There's some really interesting work being done. So watch this space as I learn more about it. I'll be telling you guys. Sound Walk. Yes. That's lovely. That's what Donna
Love
said.
it.
That's the name of the thing that she was talking about. That's very cool. Anybody else have any? I'll be sending you a feedback form, and you can be very frank. You can do it anonymously and tell me I talked too much and it went too long and I didn't answer enough questions and all those things. It's all right. I can take it. But I'm really grateful that you came. There's people here from all parts of my life. Some have had to leave because it's gone longer than it should have, but as long as usual. But there's been people here from that I hadn't seen literally since I left California, Venice, California, and moved to Berkeley. And then some of the people that are on here are from, when I first went to Berkeley, California. There's several Berkeley High School pals on here. So there's a lot of history, and I love this idea of gathering this way. Makes me very happy.
I want to say thank you also for gathering us all together. It's very good.
Thank you. I mean, I'd like to figure out one thing I'd like you guys to think about. And when I do the feedback form, I'm going to change the questions because I want you to think about, I need to figure out what to do, where I can be of use, right, Rebecca and Jenny? Right, you guys? I need to figure out what's the most useful thing I can be doing right now in terms of, let's just, given that it's all Zoom now, any ideas or any things that you think would be of use or ways for me to get stuff out there, do go ahead and feel free to send me ideas, thoughts, criticisms, all of it. I'm happy.
I sent you one already.
Okay, great, Will. Thank you, dear.
And plus, we could always start a band.
That's right, I know. And play at Paul's farm.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank you, Claire.
Like one of these, when one person starts to play an instrument and then somebody else joins in, and then somebody else joins in, and in the end, you've almost got an orchestra.
Problem is you cannot do that on Zoom.
Can you not?
I mean, well, you can if you turn off everybody's mic, because otherwise you will all be very stressed out for the rest of the day. You can't get it in sync. Right.
Hard to play together.
No.
If we'd gotten that far by now, there'd be a lot more happy musicians in the world. There are some things that have gotten very close,
and it's getting worked on all the time. And there are a few apps I've yet to examine, and Chris, maybe you've done some with them. There are some things getting closer, and yeah, because we're all missing playing in real time with people. I mean, that's, you can either do it where you know, like if you do, like when I go on these various, you know, like that course I was on, it works great because you just, everybody's muted, so you don't know how terrible it really is all sounding because it's all muted. So, you know, I think that is, that's the problem.
Impossible.
Because otherwise that would be great, Marlene.
I know.
But
Yes,
that's
it
why
is.
you're never hearing that. That's why it's never happening. And Mari's left, but God, I mean, I'm happy to send you guys the link. I can't tell you how fun. Margaret's gone a few times. The Kaylee that she puts on every Sunday at 7 p.m. our time. So whatever time this started for you is the time it starts on a Sunday. And it's just a lovely thing. It's free, and it's like a session. They would call it a session here, a Kaylee, a session. So it's a thing where you can play if you're a musician. If you want to, you can tell her you want to play. There's singers, there's all sorts of things happen on this, and it's different every week. And it's just a wonderful community that she's built since the very beginning of lockdown. It's been going on a weekly basis, and it's lovely. So I'll send you guys the link to that. It's just a good thing to go to if you just need your spirits. And there have been some amazing storytellers and things. You just never know what you're going to get. You never know on that.
Yeah.
Well, they have live concerts on internet, don't they?
Yep.
Oh,
Like this.
yes.
I better get your autograph.
Will, you'll always have my autograph, darling.
Hey, listen, take care.
Take care, Will. It's good
Thanks,
to see
everybody.
you.
Good night, Will.
Right, well,
I will.
Yeah. I will.
Bye.
Claire, I just want to say that, first of all, a big thank you for your playing. Absolutely wonderful and beautiful. I think in Zoom, I think you've got it right. I think that a solo performer performing to a group of people, to an audience, and the way in which you're putting together the thoughtful linkages and associations that people can move into a kind of, as you call, a sonic haven, this space, that's perfectly possible. And you've created it, you know, this evening. So I think you've got quite a good template, quite a good model here for a kind of, you know, it's not just a one-way transaction. You've got an interactive, you've got an audience, you've got people listening, responding to you, listening, although they're muted. And I think that this is all very good. So I think you've got a good template, a good model here for continuing to do this. And thank you very much. I think it's been very, very interesting.
Last time there was a little too much interaction in between. I kind of opened it up for conversation in between pieces, and it got a little out of hand. You saw a little snippet of it tonight from one of the guilty persons. It's fine because I found it very entertaining, but people wrote and they were like, I don't know. It got people stressed out, I think, because they thought I wasn't being able to manage it, but actually I liked it. Marilyn thought it was fun. It was entertaining, but it was it was a bit of another kind of type of thing. So it's about finding that balance of interaction and not interaction.
Quick question about the cello.
Yes.
I was a beginner violinist at one time, and
Yes.
yeah, it's pretty rough to start with. Is the cello that much easier?
No, it's not easier. For goodness sake.
I mean,
It's just less screechy because it's low, right?
yeah.
So, you know, you're not up. I mean, what I find with the violin, and I don't think I would have taken to it personally, was the cello is very physical, right? It's like the cello I used, especially back then, was bigger, I'm sure, than me because they just give you whatever school thing is around. But the violin, you know, is right here. And I remember tuning people's violins in the Baroque Orchestra when I was doing that. And it's right under your ear. And if you've got sensitive ears like Fiona, you couldn't do it at all. It would make you crazy. it's I find it amazing that people can play like those soloist violinists that you hear like playing a concerto with an orchestra.
Uh-huh.
If you've played in an orchestra close to where they are, the sound they are making on their violins in order for it to carry to the end of that hole.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how their ears take it. Quite honestly, there is just, it's right here under your ear and it is loud. It's incredibly loud. So it's just harder because it's screechier. It's
Okay,
harder on the moms involved more than that it was going to be harder for me.
I picked up a viola once, this beat up old thing, and oh my God, it turned out it was a professional instrument.
Yeah.
They only wanted $500 for it, and I wanted it in the worst way, but it was like 18 inches long, and my arm
you're
was
tiny.
Oh my
That's the other thing. Violas, particularly, you know, they're bigger than violins, and if you're not, a lot of people I think do. Rebecca's just left, but she's a violist, and I know there's a big problem with people getting violas that are too big.
Yeah, it was it just played itself. It was gorgeous, but
Too
I
bad
could,
you're not bigger.
yeah, but now I've got fibromyalgia now, so I can't hold my arms up for more than about a minute at a time. But that might be
Well, the
doable.
cello is certainly more user friendly. You have to sit down, and you don't have to sit down. Actually, that's not true. And it's just much more physical.
And your arm is down here, not here.
I started the bassoon, Jose.
Yeah.
To play in the Really Terrible Orchestra that's here. It's really called the Really Terrible Orchestra. I'm not lying. And I was very excited. And I was given a decent bassoon. It's a long story, but weirdly, I was given a bassoon. The bassoon is incredibly hard to play. I just want to report that to you.
Well, I started, it was my first wind instrument.
It's a really beautiful instrument, but I couldn't believe how much just breath it takes.
Takes a lot of air.
And your mouth, I would feel my cheeks felt just shredded after like.
Yeah, your teeth and your lips are vibrating, but you get used to it.
You practice.
You practice, yeah. But it is probably the most out of tune instrument there is.
Yes, and
and so you have to be able to adjust and have a good ear, because otherwise.
That is so true, and they go sharp really easily, don't they?
Yeah.
Because I conducted several community Baroque orchestras, and that was always having a powerful bassoonist in the group who constantly would go sharp was a problem.
Since it's the bass, I mean, it's what everyone listens to or should listen to. So
absolutely. Ciao, Bellas.
Good night, everyone. I have dinner guests arriving. Claire, this is one.
Okay, for a customary late dinner. That's lovely, Jose.
Another
so good to see you, handsome.
Oh, thanks.
Let's be in touch. It's very nice to see you again.
And I have to talk to Chris because I found out she's Heidi's sister.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, she's Heidi's sister.
And Margaret I haven't seen for ages either.
And Margaret is somebody I've only met recently. And she's lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Good friend.
And it's nice to see all the other faces that are smiling. It's great.
It's fun to connect like this, I have to say. So
Cheryl, I don't know how I know Cheryl too, but she looks so familiar.
Cheryl?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll connect people. I can ask Cheryl if she knows you at all.
But it was nice and just to see and meet everyone. I wish I could stay longer, but I've got to go.
Go have a lovely dinner, dear.
Thanks. Good night.
Let's be in touch. Thank you very much,
Bye.
Jose.
I gotta go
call you Joe, but
bye, everybody.
I'm off.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Claire. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. It's good to see you, dear.
Thank you.
It's good to see you guys. Thank you again, and I'll see some of you tomorrow morning. Marilyn, are you in Maine? No, you're in Walden. You're at the Walden house. It's beautiful out. Oh, you're muted. Wait. Oh, shoot. I don't think I can can I unmute you? Let me see if I can unmute you. Can I unmute? Oh, I don't know if I have yeah. I can't unmute you myself. Oh, shoot. Love you, Marilyn. Thank you for coming, my dear. Bye, Robin.